The lights flickered once, then twice, until the entire hall was swallowed in sudden darkness. A wave of murmurs rippled through the guests. The chandeliers above, once glowing like a constellation, now hung as shadowed glass sculptures reflecting fragments of panic. Caroline stood motionless on the stage, clutching the microphone with one hand and her clutch bag with the other. The darkness around her seemed to mirror the years she had spent in silence, years of humiliation, of being branded defective, of quietly enduring whispers she never deserved. Then, with a faint hum, the lights returned, the chandeliers blazed to life, and the crystal tableware gleamed once again. Guests blinked, disoriented. A few chuckled nervously. Just a power hiccup, someone said. But the brief blackout had changed something in the air. The warmth that had filled the room moments earlier had evaporated. The laughter faded into a still, electric silence. Caroline raised her head slowly, her expression calm, almost serene, yet her eyes burned with quiet fire. "I apologize," the host said lightly into his mic. "A small technical issue. Please, Miss Caroline, continue." Caroline nodded once. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the steadiness of someone who had walked through a storm and come out the other side. "Earlier," she began, "I spoke about memories, of family, of childhood, of growing up together. But since today seems to be a day for truth, allow me to share mine." The gentle background music stopped. Forks clinked softly onto plates as guests froze mid-bite. At the family table, Eleanor's fingers tightened around her napkin. Henry's breathing grew shallow. Vanessa's smile trembled. Nathan's jaw clenched. Caroline opened her clutch and withdrew a folder, thick, neatly bound, labeled with hospital letterhead. She held it up for everyone to see. "This," she said softly, "is Nathan Foster's medical diagnosis. It was issued 3 years before our marriage." A murmur of disbelief swept through the room. Nathan shot to his feet. "Caroline, stop this. That's private, fabricated." "Is it?" Caroline turned toward him, her voice unwavering. "Because I had it verified last week by the same hospital's records department, and they confirmed its authenticity." She gestured toward the projector operator near the stage. A moment later, the document appeared on the massive LED screen behind her. The black letters stood out starkly under the soft golden light. Diagnosis: azoospermia, severe infertility. Recommendation: assisted reproduction required. Gasps filled the air. People leaned forward, whispering. Some covered their mouths in shock. Nathan's complexion turned crimson. Vanessa looked as if her blood had drained away completely. Caroline continued, her voice gaining quiet strength with each word. "Nathan knew this. He knew he could not conceive naturally. Yet for years, he made me believe that I was the problem, that I was broken, that I was the reason our marriage failed." She turned her gaze to her parents. "And what's worse, my family knew. My mother, my father, and my sister, all of them." "No." Eleanor stood abruptly, trembling. "Caroline, stop this nonsense. You're humiliating yourself." Caroline's calm expression didn't waver. "Am I? Or have I simply stopped protecting your lies?" The words cut through the hall like glass. Henry lowered his head into his hands. Vanessa clutched Nathan's arm, her lips quivering. Nathan muttered under his breath, "This is insane." Caroline's voice softened, but it was the softness of finality. "For 5 years, you let me live in shame. You called me defective. You whispered about me at family dinners. You turned me into a ghost in my own bloodline, all while you knew the truth." A wave of silence swept through the crowd. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. Caroline stepped aside, allowing the next slide to project on the screen, a printed email. "This," she said, "is an email Nathan sent to the hospital's IT department, asking to restrict access to his medical records and modify specific data fields. He wanted to erase evidence of his condition." Nathan's chair screeched as he lunged forward, shouting, "That's illegal. You stole those files." "No," Caroline said calmly. "Margaret Lee from your records department gave them to me. She said she was tired of watching a good woman suffer for a lie." All eyes turned to a woman sitting quietly in the back row, Margaret, who lowered her gaze but did not deny it. Whispers spread like wildfire. "She's telling the truth. Oh my God, he's infertile, and they all knew?" Eleanor sat frozen. her face drained of its usual imperious confidence. Henry reached for her hand, but she pulled it away. Vanessa, now pale as her wedding dress, stared at her sister in horror. Why are you doing this?" she stammered. Caroline's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. "Because truth sometimes brings pain, but it also brings freedom. For years, I lived in chains built by your lies. Tonight, I break them." She placed the microphone gently on the podium. "Nathan, Vanessa, you chose deceit over decency. Mom, Dad, you chose pride over love. And me? I choose peace." As she stepped down from the stage, no one spoke. The only sound was her heels clicking against the marble floor. Each step echoed like punctuation marks in a story long suppressed. By the time she reached the exit, Eleanor's trembling voice broke the silence. "Caroline, please, don't leave like this." Caroline turned once, her expression unreadable. "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad. You lost a daughter the moment you decided she wasn't good enough." She pushed open the door, and cool autumn air flooded in. The chandeliers flickered once more behind her as if the hall itself were exhaling after years of holding its breath. Outside, under the golden glow of the setting sun, Caroline finally felt something she hadn't felt in years: lightness. The weight of shame, the burden of silence, all of it lifted. Carried away by the evening breeze, she closed her eyes and whispered, "Grandma, you were right. The truth really does set us free." 1 year later, a soft autumn breeze rustled through the brownstones of Brooklyn. Caroline stepped out of her car, her posture elegant yet relaxed. Her new home stood proudly, a renovated brick house with ivy climbing the walls and laughter echoing faintly from inside. "Emma, sweetheart, could you grab the smaller box?" she called. A 10-year-old girl with curly hair ran down the steps, her bright eyes full of life. "Got it, Mom." Caroline smiled warmly. "Mom." The word still made her heart flutter. After long months of paperwork and emotional healing, she had adopted Emma, a bright, creative little girl who had also known abandonment and rejection. Together, they were rebuilding what family truly meant. Inside, the walls were adorned with framed quotes and photos from Caroline's new initiative, New Beginnings, a support group she had founded for women struggling with infertility and emotional trauma. Twice a month, women gathered in her living room to share their stories. Their motto, "My worth is not measured by my ability to bear children." Caroline placed fresh flowers in a vase and glanced at the newspaper on her table. The headline read, "Dr. Nathan Foster's license revoked for medical record tampering." Below the article was a small note about Vanessa leaving her job and seeking solace in a spiritual retreat somewhere in Utah. Caroline folded the paper quietly and looked out the window. In the fading autumn light, she could almost hear her grandmother's voice again, gentle, proud, and full of love. "You are not defective, my dear. You are extraordinary." Caroline smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I am," she whispered back. The doorbell rang. Laura, her loyal friend who had stood by her through everything, stood outside with a picnic basket. Emma ran up joyfully. "Let's go, Mom. It's a beautiful day." Caroline nodded, closing the door behind her. As they walked down the sunlit street, her heart was at peace. She had lost her old family, but gained a new one, not bound by blood, but by truth, resilience, and love. And this time, she wasn't walking away from her past. She was walking toward her future. The truth at Vanessa's wedding. The words on the medical report blurred before Caroline's eyes. Motility, severely impaired. The diagnosis stated that natural conception was nearly impossible. Her fingers went numb. It was as if someone had reached inside her chest and crushed her heart. With trembling hands, she turned the page again, her pulse pounding in her ears. "This can't be right," she whispered. "Is this real?" Across the cafe table, Margaret, a senior nurse at the hospital, looked at her with quiet sympathy. "Without a doubt," she said softly. "I handled these records myself. And there's something else you should know." Caroline's breath caught. Vanessa worked in the records department. Margaret continued. She knew about Nathan's condition from the very beginning. The words hit Caroline like cold water. "You mean, my sister knew all along?" Margaret nodded slowly. "Yes, from the start." For a long moment, Caroline couldn't speak. The cafe noise around her, the clinking cups, soft chatter, distant jazz music, faded into silence. All she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat echoing in her chest. Why? Caroline finally whispered. Why didn't he tell me? Why did he let me carry the blame? Why let me think it was my fault? Male pride, Margaret replied gently, especially coming from a doctor. But what's worse, he tried to hide the truth. He falsified some of his records to make it seem like everything was fine. She pulled another folder from her bag and placed it on the table. Inside was a printed email Nathan had sent to the hospital's IT department, requesting access restrictions and edits to his medical files. I thought it was suspicious, Margaret explained. When I dug deeper, I realized he was trying to erase evidence of his infertility. And there's something else. Caroline's stomach tightened. What now? Margaret hesitated before speaking. Your parents. They've known about this for nearly 2 years. Caroline's eyes widened. What? Her voice rose slightly, trembling. Vanessa told them, Margaret said softly. They agreed to stay silent. I overheard the conversation by accident. For a long moment, Caroline sat frozen. Her reflection in the cafe window looked like a stranger, pale, hollow, eyes brimming with disbelief. The truth was too large to process all at once. Why are you telling me this now? She finally asked. Margaret's expression softened. Because I'm retiring next week. I've seen you blamed, humiliated, and alienated from your own family. It's wrong. You deserve to know what really happened. Silence stretched between them. Outside, the city lights began to glow, blurring in the early evening mist. Inside, Caroline's memories began to rearrange themselves, her husband's cold remarks, Vanessa's smug pity, her parents' distant eyes. Every moment that once confused her now made sense in the cruelest way. Margaret pushed an envelope across the table. Here's the proof, every document you'll need. What you do with it is up to you. Caroline accepted it with trembling hands. Thank you, Margaret, she said quietly, for telling me the truth. That night, Caroline sat alone in her apartment. The city outside pulsed with life, car horns, laughter, music from nearby restaurants, but her world felt eerily still. She opened the envelope again and reread the documents. Her eyes burned with tears, but her heart grew colder, sharper. The people she loved most had built their happiness on her humiliation. Her husband, her sister, even her parents. When her phone rang, she hesitated before answering. It was Laura, her closest friend. Caroline's voice trembled as she recounted everything. Laura gasped. That's unbelievable. Are you still going to the wedding? Caroline stared out the window, where the reflection of city lights shimmered in her tears. I don't know, she said, but I won't stay silent anymore. You're going to expose them, aren't you? Caroline's voice steadied. I'm going to tell the truth. You'll destroy your family, Laura warned. They destroyed me first, Caroline replied softly. For years, I blamed myself. That ends now. In the days that followed, Caroline verified every detail. She met with 2 independent specialists who confirmed the diagnosis. She even consulted a lawyer about her right to disclose the information publicly. Every fact aligned. Every piece of evidence was solid. The night before the wedding, Caroline sat by her window, typing a speech on her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keys before she wrote the first line. Truth sometimes comes with pain, but it is what sets us free. When she finally went to bed, her heart was steady. For the first time in years, she slept peacefully. The wedding hall was a masterpiece of elegance, white roses, crystal chandeliers, the soft murmur of luxury. Vanessa looked radiant in her gown, every inch the perfect bride. Nathan stood beside her, confident and composed, shaking hands with guests. Caroline arrived quietly, dressed in a simple navy gown. She was seated at the far edge of the family section, exactly where Vanessa had planned for her. The air buzzed with laughter and champagne chatter, but Caroline felt detached, like a ghost observing the living. When Vanessa's toast began, her words dripped with false sweetness. Family, she said, is about truth and honesty. Caroline felt something inside her snap. Moments later, when it was her turn to speak, she stepped onto the stage. The lights dimmed slightly as she took the microphone. At first, her voice was calm. Our family has shared many memories, Christmas mornings, birthday surprises, graduation parties, moments that once felt pure. The crowd smiled, relaxed, but Caroline's next words sliced through the warmth like glass. But since this is a day for truth, she said, let me share the real reason Nathan and I divorced. Gasps echoed through the hall. Nathan froze. Vanessa's smile vanished. Caroline reached into her clutch and handed a file to the staff. Within seconds, the large screen behind her illuminated with medical documents. This, Caroline said, her voice steady, is Nathan's diagnosis, severe male infertility, dated 3 years before our marriage. The audience stirred. Nathan stood abruptly. That's a lie. She's manipulating. Caroline raised her voice, unwavering. Here's the reconfirmation from a specialist, just last month. And here, she held up another paper, is proof that he tried to falsify his records. An email to the hospital's IT department. A murmur of disbelief swept across the guests. Vanessa's face turned ghostly white. But Nathan wasn't the only one who knew. Caroline continued. My parents and my sister have known this for 2 years, yet they let me live as the defective one. They excluded me, shamed me, whispered about me at family gatherings. Her voice shook, but she didn't falter. They all knew the truth, and they let me suffer. The audience was silent except for faint gasps and whispers. Vanessa hid her face in her hands. Eleanor, their mother, stood and shouted, Caroline, stop, you're humiliating us. Caroline looked at her sadly. Mom, I didn't humiliate anyone. I'm just telling the truth. Henry, her father, sank back into his chair, his eyes brimming with tears. Caroline placed the microphone down. For years, I was told I was broken, but today, I leave those lies behind. Vanessa, Nathan, you can keep your illusion. I'm walking away with the truth. She turned, walked off the stage, and didn't look back. The hall fell utterly silent. The music had stopped. The perfect wedding was shattered. Outside, under the fading light of sunset, Caroline inhaled deeply. For the first time, the air felt clean. She looked up at the golden sky and whispered to herself, you are not defective. Her late grandmother's voice echoed in her heart. Caroline smiled faintly, started her car, and drove away, not just from the wedding, but from the years of pain and deception that had chained her. That day, she didn't lose a family, she freed herself from one.